Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, this is the future. You're the
I still
Jetsons.
think we need to make sure that we can develop our other traffic services. To have it
Yeah, yeah.
entrance and exit, I mean, saying you arrived.
What time's your thing?
And boy, I tell you,
5:58.
I need to call Melinda. I'm gonna be picking up trash
Couldn't
on my
find
side of
the
town. Go look at the
Don't
trash
have battery in it either.
as you
My
go
mom just come
off
in just
21 on the right, you know, where the lighting place is. The landscape
Find you a
is
jewelry
covered in
store.
vines. And it's like a garbage truck.
Music.
Look at this.
I mean, that's what we look like.
No, and you don't carry a cell phone either.
You couldn't find it.
I think they'll get.
That's how important
I think
it is.
she'll get Public Works out there. They should clean up all the landscape.
Alarmed to find
Yeah, I
it.
had been
Clean it
somewhere.
up.
Commission.
Because you're not
But
gonna
they
get,
go off in my pocketbook.
if you wait on NCDOT,
It's easier to see than the screen.
Well, number two there, I might address what we talked about.
and I took one look, I said, no, that's too much for me. I got enough picking up along the railroad track.
There's more trash everywhere.
Wish I had a camera that we could take license plates.
Okay, and I will do my best to.
But my grandkids like going out, getting a bag and having grabbers.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Dave, you ready?
So far, I got them full.
Okay, call the Downtown Planning Steering Committee to order for February the 24th. First item on the agenda is, is called to order, we did. The second is roll call. Nate?
Here,
Gatewood? Here. Doug? Sean? Here. John, excuse me. John Foster? Here. Don Gist?
Hey, neighbor.
Charles
Yes, ma'am.
Lee?
last Thursday,
Here.
I thought maybe. it-
Janelle? Harris?
But I think I did.
Elaine?
I think I saw you
Bob?
at the deer.
Sarah McCauley's
I
here.
guess I got the wrong.
Elizabeth Rodriguez?
Were you out there last Thursday?
Cindy?
No, just last Thursday.
Janeka?
Maybe it
Jan-
looked like you.
Jessica, excuse me. All right, then the extra officio members, April, Barbara, Kathy, John, Diane, John O'Neill, Mike, Stephen.
Here.
Thank you.
The Rexall drugstore.
All right, next item is approval of the the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, in discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the minute meetings from December the 9th.
Make a motion to approve those minutes as
Is there a
presented.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? Move, all vote? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Minutes, February the 3rd.
You were at Northwind, he was at
You want another motion, Chair?
Did you make for all of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Did everybody realize they were voting for all of them?
Yes.
Good, then they're approved.
All right.
Next item is public comment. Well, I don't believe we had anybody sign up, did we? No one signed up, good. Greenway and Connective Division statement. Well, I mean, we can move along, you know.
3 minutes
I didn't,
ahead.
they're welcome to come speak, I didn't mean that. All right, take it however you want to.
Good.
I told Sean he had known you quite long enough, this is the way you operate.
Don't hang around too long.
He said this is a good thing.
All right, can you hear me? Yes. All right. Okay, so, let me see. All right. Okay, so I wanted to give you all just some information about what the goal is of the Greenway in Huntersville, and then also where it stands, because I do think as part of our planning, if y'all understand that, I think it's something to consider of how we take that information and apply it to our downtown plan. We have some kind of exciting things that'll be coming through downtown, and so We have an opportunity to think about including it or not, but at least I figure if you all have the information, we can at least make that decision. So a few things in terms of our goals. All Huntersville residents will have the ability to come downtown via Greenway and sidewalk connections. Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson will be connected via Greenway. And Huntersville will be the midpoint of the North Carolina-South Carolina state line to Statesville. So from South Carolina up to Statesville, Seam Trail that's being developed by Mecklenburg County. So as part of downtown planning, we have an opportunity to consider features that would make Huntersville a Greenway destination. So in terms of where all these things stand, first I'll talk about our Huntersville vision. The goal is to add, our initial goal for right now is to add 14 miles of Greenway, creating a north-south and east-west Huntersville connections by 2030. The status of that, which is super exciting, is that 11 miles of that, 80%, is funded and targeted for completion from now through 2026. So it's not just a, hey, we got this goal. It's happening and things are in process there. So we're going to have a lot of Greenway. The way Greenway looks today is going to look very different over the next 4 years. We're also working to have those remaining miles prioritized for completion by 2030 or sooner. We're also working with the town to complete sidewalk gaps connecting every neighborhood, school, park, and major shopping center into the Greenway by 2030 or sooner. And again, we outlined where those sidewalk gaps are, and we've given those priorities to the town. Some of them are in process already. So again, it's not like, hey, someday this might happen. We're actively working with the town to make that happen. So the result of all that is that between Greenway and sidewalk connectivity, every Huntersville neighborhood would be connected into our downtown. And so, thinking about that and thinking of what we're doing here, there's definitely an opportunity. And so this is a picture just showing the timing for the different segments. The things in black are completed. And then it kind of goes, 2023 is the light blue. 2022 is sort of a darker blue right by the post office segment right there, if you see that. 2023 is the lighter blue. 2024 is dark green, and 2025 is the light green, and then all the way out through 2026, which is in yellow. And if you see that, that's connecting from Otten Nature Preserve, if you know where that is, on the other side of Beatty's Ford, kind of between Neck Road and Jim Kidd. It's connecting all the way from there, crossing Beatty's Ford, going through the segment that's there already, all the way out to Asbury Chapel. And all of that is funded and targeted for completion by 2026, as well as the segment going north up along Winfield, connecting to Brookdale Commons Parkway up there. That's that 23, 24, again, funded and targeted for completion by those states. Connectivity to Cornelius and Davidson. Once the tunnel opens and then the North Meck Park Greenway is completed, we'll be connected into the greenways to Cornelius, which then connects us into Davidson. Our current projections show those connections, the North Meck Park Greenway and the ability to open the tunnel in 2023 and 2024. This will open up a network of greenways and multi-use paths between Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. So here's the map. Sorry, it's really busy, but the cool thing about it being so busy is that that's the network that we're all going to have. There's 3 stars on there. The top, if you kind of follow 115, the top one is Davidson. Right below that is Cornelius, and then Huntersville. And it's a combination of sidewalks, multi-use path, and greenway. But really, by 2024, we'll have access to that, and they'll have access to us, right? So, that you create a network. There's at least a 20-mile loop in there if you go all the way around the Cornelius, Huntersville, Davidson. That brings people, to come do it. They have a destination and a place to go through that. Lastly is the Mecklenburg County Seam Trail. It's planned to connect from the North Carolina state line up to Statesville, running along 115. It'll be 50 miles long and projected to be the longest trail in the area, and the midpoint will be in Huntersville. So in the status of this one, it's not quite as like on the books, but, you know, they're doing a planning study. My understanding is that's happening now. So, but they're serious about it, you know, and things are moving, you know, at least in terms of taking a look at it. And so here's just kind of a representation of it, showing it going up 115 in purple. So all that being said, there's kind of a, you know, confluence of things. There's, you know, the north being very fully connected. There's our whole town being able to get connected, as well as this potential, you know, this long-term goal of that steam trail coming and us being in the middle. And if you think of all that, you know, in our planning, we could take that into consideration and we could think, hey, for Greenway, let's make sure we have these amenities. Or let's try to be a destination. Maybe here's some unique features we could, that we could add to our downtown plan, so that when people are getting on the Greenway, Huntersville is a place that they want to stop because we've got something different, you know, than everybody else. So, you know, it's just something to think about here, and I just wanted to make sure all of you were aware of those things. And then after that, so thank you. And I'll just make a note, the sidewalk gaps we identified is just an appendix. You all have copies of that, so if you're interested in taking a look at where we've identified those, they're out there for you. And that's it.
Diane, thank you so much for the presentation. Next item on the agenda, committee will have these discussions. We have these topics down for you. Discovery Phase 1 Day.
Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
As we, and we'll talk more about this because there's schedule revisions that are for discussion tonight as well. We're in the process now of trying to slow down a little bit and get some information to the committee before we, and not have a presentation right at the committee, give you some stuff in advance and give you some chances to discuss things. We were kind of changing on the fly, and I didn't send out this information until Tuesday, and I apologize. I wish I could have gotten it out quicker. It'll become more, we'll get in a better rhythm as we move forward. But I thought, because of the fact that and I asked Shook Kelly, you know, can you give us something in the interim that the committee can discuss, knowing that they're not going to be here tonight, and also knowing that the final public survey results, observations from the committee homework assignment for the photos, that's not available yet. That'll be available after March 1st. So in terms of what you've been shown is a 7-page listing, I think, of they're talking about digging a little bit more deeply into a subject, or they're starting to look at some options that are starting to surface that they think are worth exploring. And some of the things that I would hope to impress upon you is they are digging under every single rock to figure out and explore different transportation options for trying to solve the puzzle of volumes on Gilead and 115. And I think you're going to see that I mean, if you look at that and you read that, I hope you'd be impressed that they're looking at several different potential solutions, and they are in the process of contacting the North Carolina Department of Transportation to keep working further on these to see what's feasible and what's not. You'll also see in bold that they're talking about things like a downtown sidewalk improvement plan, preparing BRT and CRT station area plans, a downtown parking plan that would build on the existing plan that's been produced, a downtown tree fund or bank, downtown stormwater study. So you can see that they're looking at a lot of different elements, and I wasn't really going to go beyond sending you this 7-page document on behalf of Shook Kelly. And if you've had a chance to look at it and you want some time to discuss it, I think this would be the appropriate time. So I'm going to stop unless you have questions.
Are there any questions? Nate?
Yeah, do I have to press this here?
It's on.
Okay. I may have missed it, but I don't see the Church Street extension from Holbrook Road past the Huntersville Press Cemetery, and then the realignment of Church Street, where there were going to be the Wooner on the old Church Street. I didn't see that in there, and that's a key north-south connector to help traffic move on that side of town. So I think that should be included.
And we will send that message back. They're watching tonight, so.
Okay.
They heard what you said.
So how far south is that Church Street extension supposed to go?
Eventually, I think it's
All-
headed all the way to Brighton or
Brighton.
close to schools, but
It
right
should.
now, right now,
If it's not, it should.
yeah, because you're already getting passed down to the business park. And, you know, the right-of-way is there, I mean, the railroad's there, so, and that is a scene trail.
And we'll add both of those comments. And this is the kind of stuff that helps. I mean, these are all of you have certain areas that you know very well. To give the consultants a heads up is a good thing to have. And it may have just been omitted mistakenly.
So they are looking at Gilead Road up through Huntersville Concord Road, all the way out, crossways from 21.
Yes.
And it's good, I'm glad that they're looking at Gilead Road, because when you really look at the town, and you look at 77 and Gilead Road, you know, me personally, looking at Huntersville 5 years from now and 20 years from now, Gilead Road is really the gateway to downtown. So, you know, that's one that we really need to make sure we try to work with the state to get right. I think that's critical.
Or get rid of the state.
Yeah.
Well, and
Do it ourselves.
that's not a bad
Just
idea
take it over ourselves.
on that particular one.
Yeah, I'm in favor of their execution.
And one of the ideas in here is to four-lane it, I think, from post office on down into town. And there's several ideas in here, right? But one of them is four-lane, which I would definitely vote against. But yeah, that's one of the third bullet they're looking at on here is,
You said do the 4 lanes or eliminate the 4 lanes?
I don't think 4 lanes is what we need.
Well, I agree.
We need to choke it down. It needs to be on-street parking, it needs to be treed medians and that type of thing to try to make it a little more user-friendly.
But I think that needs to be backed up as close as we can to the new interchange they're doing at 21.
Right, they're coming right in front of the post office with all that. So from there on out, for the next, what is that, quarter mile, it's ours to do, I think. Of course, we've got to do it through NCDOT, but that's a big part of this project, I think, is design elements for that part of the road.
You take it over.
Well, please remember that as we move forward, when they talk about talking or discussing these topics with NCDOT, it's to try to come up with an actionable strategy. So it's a way to work with DOT to come to a conclusion that I think allows the community to express what it really wants.
Well, since I do live on Gilead Road, I do have a comment about making it green in the middle. Because whose land do you think you're taking to do that? I would rather see the beautification on the edges, on the land side of the railroads, the sidewalks rather, than take land in the middle of the Gilead Road, because you're just going to extend out into people's yards to take up more roadway pavement. That's my comment. Thank you.
I was going to mention one other item that is not highlighted in here, and I think we're discovering in some of our discussions with the consultant team, the elementary school really is a significant feature, particularly on the northwest quadrant of the downtown. And so we're finding that there are going to have to be some discussions with CMS, and we're going to have to try to work together with them to figure out what their future plans are, because it has such an impact on travel patterns and the lack, basically, of circulation on the north side of Gilead.
I got another thing we probably need to look at is somehow to discourage the heavy industrial traffic we have in downtown, somehow to mitigate some of that, give them another way around, encourage them to use 73 instead of coming down Mount Holly, or Huntersville Concord. If we got to use speed tables or something like that, just to try to encourage them to find another way around, because it is something. If you look out there, you've probably got half the traffic out there is commercial, and half of that again is probably multi-axle. It's just not, it's not pretty at any time during the weekday anyway. So another consideration is not just the traffic, the type of traffic we have in downtown.
Has the town ever had discussion with some of these industrial companies and said, can you go a different way? I mean,
Well, the obvious one to me is Metrolina, but I'll
right.
defer to Jack if he has any comments about that.
These are state roads, and so.
I get that, I just-
We're not really in a position to direct them elsewhere. But I will say this, if you just think about design, and you think about this intersection right out here, you think of the intersection right by Charles's building, which is really tight. If you were to give it to an engineer to rework, it would be much wider, right? I mean, it just would, because it's the design, but it also would make it much more comfortable for larger trucks to make that turn. And so it's those little details that kind of give hints to this is not the way you want to go. And getting back to some of the comments about kind of prioritizing downtown for downtown and not to shoot traffic through. These are the multitude of things that have to be thought through to try to encourage them to go elsewhere.
One thing I might add is, with the toll lanes, we have that beautiful Hambright Road on-ramp and off-ramp off the toll lanes. But trucks are not allowed in the toll lanes. So, Shook Kelly, why don't they make a run at Centra and DOT and see if they can go ahead and make an exception for the use of Hambright for commercial trucks, class 6, 7, and 8. Let's go ahead and use that, for that purpose. And you would take a lot of truck traffic off of exit 23 using Hambright and come to the back with the business park and all of that. Maybe that's a way for Metrolina also to do it. But again, we have to go ahead and go to the folks that own that road for the next 50 years, being Centra. So maybe, that's a windmill they can go after and see if they can get some concessions.
Is there feasibility from DOT to do an express exit off of Stumptown? Is that feasible, possibly? Because it goes right over 77, and that could reroute traffic somewhat, at least to split up exit 23 and alleviate a lot of that pressure and congestion that's on 21 and 115. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but it's worth exploring.
They're looking at that on Westmoreland as well.
Yeah,
The
Westmoreland.
issue becomes distance between exit ramps on a federal highway.
Right.
So, that's something else I'd have to take a look at, but that's a great idea as well.
Yeah.
As far as Metrolina is concerned, the distance from them to Poplar Tent to 73 is
Exactly.
much closer.
Much
Than
easier,
it is
yeah.
coming through, and much easier, and 73 is going to be widened to 4-lane. So it just serves them either way, to 85 or 77, so much better.
That just might be an ask, right? You could
Right,
ask the
might
Van
be an
Winkle,
ask,
would
can
you
you
mind
direct that way?
asking your drivers to use Poplar Tent 73 rather than to come through downtown?
Are there any
That's-
other access roads to the North Neck Construction landfill besides Holbrook's? No, there's no way in and out, because I've noticed there's a lot of traffic coming in that way.
One way in, one way out.
I didn't know if there was like another way.
You know Janelle, don't you?
This time that the Bearhawk Bridge, the Bearhawk area, that's the intended multi-lane road and get that traffic off of the local Holbrook Road, so there are plans to do that.
What's the date on that, Jack? Is that, what year is that?
So that-
No, I was just thinking because right now I see Holbrook's, there's so much activity coming back and forth on 115 there from that, as far as this big tree.
That's the intention, is to make it
Okay.
easy that way, and then to get to Lee's question is what's the timing on that? It's kind of there's a big chunk of land that the private sector owns, and it's kind of up to the private sector to develop. And we were having discussions with the private sector of a fairly significant industrial park in that area. But that's the area that has these sewer limits now. So that's kind of been put on hold. So there is interest, and once Charlotte Water can get over the sewer issues, and that's maybe 2026, then certainly before then, things might start to happen, so.
Isn't there still one holdout landowner?
There has been discussions with folks, not that I've been involved with, but I've heard secondhand, so all I can
I
say
mean,
is.
I know they've been talking about it, because I know Griffins would love to get off Holbrook Road.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not their intention to stay there, but I think there was one landowner that they haven't been able to negotiate with, or the town has.
So there are private sector negotiation with private landowners that I've heard progressed.
Okay.
If I may say, there's advantages and disadvantages of being in this town just 42 years. To some people, I'm still a newcomer. To other people, I've been here too long. In my previous life, I owned tractor trailers. I don't have to tell anybody. We can go look out Jackie's window and we can see that the gas has gone up 10 cents since yesterday. With what's going on, however many miles it is from here, that gas might go up again 10 cents tonight, it might go up again 10 cents tomorrow night. But let me tell you a little secret. Your cars probably get 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 miles a gallon, depends on what you drive, what it plugs into. Those tractor trailers, if they're lucky, get 6 miles to the gallon. Those truck drivers go the shortest route for timing and cost. I'm not defending them. I'm just telling you from owning way too many of them for 30 years and being raised in them, they, right or wrong, have the right to use this road. In sheer defense of the truck drivers, they are not the only culprit out there. I personally have been passed by a CATS bus, personally, in the turn lane. And I'm going 7 or 8 miles an hour above the speed limit, and I wasn't going fast enough to suit him or her. I said him or her because I know what it was. CPD, Charlotte Police, will fly down that road, no lights, no sirens. It ain't just the tractor trailers that are causing the problems as far as what my world is safety. But I accept that those big trucks are intimidating. But they're the necessity of life. And if you don't have them, don't call me from Food Line or from Harris Teeter, from Publix or from Milo or from Earth Air or from Lowe's and say there's no food on the shelves. But they do what they do because of expediency and trying to save a nickel. Because every time our gas goes up, their fuel goes up more. So I accept that they are a nuisance, but they're also another word, they're a necessity. And it is no fun walking on this sidewalk over here that used to have street parking. I reckon I parked on that 2 or 3 times in here, but I didn't bring up trucks. Used to be, it was safe to walk there because there was something between there and traffic. But when they built this building, it was built in the right-of-way on both 115 and on Holmesville Concord Road against some of our vehement objections. So it's not necessarily the trucks. It may have been the planning of the government and what they did to the roads.
Okay, anything else on,
Infrastructure, I got one more on.
all right, go ahead.
There, on public transit, we've still got the commuter rail in here, and I know that, I know we're supposed to, Jack, but they go into a lot of detail on that, and I think we need to make sure we understand what the goal is there, so, I mean, Norfolk Southern's track out there is Class 1, so if we're gonna use their track, we're talking Amtrak, we're not talking commuter rail, right? We're talking a passenger rail. So if we're not gonna use their track but build beside it, there's one scenario. Or if they're gonna turn their track over to us so we can build our commuter rail, that's another. So there's all kind of differences, nuanced differences in the way we're gonna handle that, but that needs to be defined a little better if we're still gonna leave this in our planning structure.
Just so we're clear, so the passenger rail that was considered was commuter rail being.
Heavy train.
Yeah, those are different things, right? Okay.
And when I first got here in 2001, basically up to 2013, there was a working relationship between CATS and Norfolk Southern. And at that time, Norfolk Southern was considering letting CATS run the train on their facility. CATS has to upgrade it, CATS has to reimburse them, pay them for that. The CATS would run the train.
The passenger train.
Correct. That was the discussion at that time.
Okay,
It also
okay.
could have been structured in a way that Norfolk Southern would run the train. So that was all part of the negotiation. So I just mentioned that to just make sure that we're kind of like on the same page at this point in time.
Well, these guys aren't, I don't think, because they're talking about a commuter rail. That's a whole nother animal. No, that's a passenger train if you're using Class 1 track, right?
So the nomenclature we use here is commuter rail, and that's, again, it's basically the 90s. The commuter rail being, a diesel, heavy diesel. So maybe you and I just need to.
Well, I think we're straight. I think everybody else thinks this is something they're going to hop on 10 times a day and get down to downtown Charlotte. And that's not what a passenger train is, right?
Yeah, so the two types of trains that were planned were for the commuter rail, which is the heavy trains, which takes a lot of energy to get up to speed and a lot of energy to effort to slow down. And then there's light rail. Light rail is what you see in Charlotte now, which starts and stops, it's electric, it's quick. And that is the one that has a whole lot more frequency than the commuter rail.
Right.
But they were also talking about diesel multiple units, not
That's
an
right.
engine pulling passenger cars. In other words, they could go forwards and backwards,
Correct.
and you could run 1, 2, or 3, depending on the time of day. Because that's what the demonstration model was that we took
That
a
we
ride
took.
on in
Yeah.
whenever, 2003?
Yeah, we rode it.
Okay. So that's more like the trains pulling into Grand Central versus the ones that are shuttling the people around in an inner city model.
It's not the same as the
Right,
light rail
right.
that you see in Charlotte.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of use for a passenger
Janae?
train.
Are we totally opposed to like what Sean was talking about with like Hyperloop futures and stuff like that?
I don't think anything is off the table at this point.
I mean, like as far as the town and the funds and stuff are concerned, like is that even a
That's not
reality
being
or
discussed
possibility?
now. I mean, so the answer to that is it's not being discussed now, but over the years that I've been here, people have been talking about using even hydrogen power to move up. You don't say no to anything, that's what you say.
Well, and conceptually, Virgin's already got it on the books for Raleigh. So it's there, and it's in North Carolina. I looked at kind of the infrastructure of this, and from my experience living in the Middle East and Dubai, that's what they're building between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and I got to see it firsthand. And it's very simple, and that's the greatest thing about it. It's a tube that you suck oxygen out of, which takes the resistance out of basically a bullet. And that bullet's fired, it goes 600 miles an hour to its next destination. It's incredibly efficient, incredibly cost-effective. And I think it's something that needs to be considered if we're doing planning for 20 years in the future. It's the trains themselves will change immensely in the next 20 years. They'll probably be maglev style trains where you don't have that resistance. And that brings up something else that I don't find in anything in Shook Kelly that's overly innovative. You know, one of the things that I'm not seeing is things like charging stations that are part of the infrastructure bill, which we can get federal funding for. You know, where is anything from the federal infrastructure bill in here? I would like to see the mechanics of this a little bit better. You know, I think, for instance, we can use a lot of those federal infrastructure funds to help develop downtown Huntersville. Why don't we? But I don't see anything in this that talks about that. I just see NCDOT, and, you know, from kind of a very one-way model. I just think there's a lot more that we can kind of get, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, just, you can jump in, but in terms of the infrastructure monies that are available, I will just tell you that one of the slides that they had in the public presentations, here's some possible regional storm from a land where it sits on the geography, that these might be regional stormwater places, and so we are talking about that very thing.
Right.
How might we leverage infrastructure money to do stormwater?
Yeah, that would be
So that
awesome.
is being talked about. In terms of the charging stations, that has not been talked about, but that's a wonderful idea.
I think we, you know, because look at the price of gas, you know, they're predicting it to go to $7 a gallon right now. You know, they're predicting oil to go $150 a barrel. So it's going to increase that demand for electric cars, which GM is supposed to already end electric gas car production by 2030. So I think we have to prepare ourselves for 2040, 2045. That's got to be on the books, in one way or another.
So,
The one comment I was going to make is, I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I put a little, I look at it just a slight bit differently. First of all, the creativity and innovation needs to be there, and I don't dispute that.
Right.
But sometimes, if you kind of set your course on what you want as a community, what you find out is you now have an adopted policy document, and in many cases, it helps in whenever funding comes up. I mean, you don't know what kind of funding packages might be available. There's CARPO, the state, there's federal funding.
Right.
There are even private sector loans, et cetera. So I think what we want to do is position ourselves so that we have a good idea of what we want, and then we go after those opportunities when the funding becomes, when we see a match between what we want and what kind of funding becomes available.
so the town has several legitimate parking places. The deck here at Town Hall, I guess, in the property behind us, so, and across the street at the opening to the Greenway. Are there any charging stations installed there?
There are none.
So one of the things that we could do is to request that they have some charging stations, that some be started there. That's a start for Huntersville, to have a couple charging stations.
And when you get to the new town hall, you might want to make that on the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot to, I'm really familiar with that infrastructure bill, and there is quite a bit of funding, particularly for those charging stations. And, you know, they want to stimulate that infrastructure as much as possible. So I'm sure we can work something out to where it's funded, or, you know, the town's not paying for it, probably not even NCDOT's paying for it.
There's quite a bit of money for it, I've read that too, and right now, where there's just a few hundred charging stations throughout, they want thousands of charging stations throughout the county, so yeah, it's something we need to tap into.
One of the things I saw, I was looking around at different aspects of the electric cars, is a solar roof over parking. I think some airports have it now. And I've heard good, bad things about it, but that's pretty cool to be able to, you know, clean energy.
If there are innovative technologies or just creatively designed systems serving downtowns or communities, and you have a suggestion, this is the kind of stuff we really need feedback on. So thank you.
Just one quick thing on the Shook Kelly thing. With regards to parking, obviously, this is an issue because we don't have really sufficient parking here. You know, they said that they were going to liaise with, on Section 5, you know, liaising with DOT and trying to get, you know, a better idea of the 2006 parking study and how it can kind of fit into our plans. I guess my concern is the Main Street project and how it's taking away parking. Is there any recourse to changing that plan as it's already in motion? Do we have a way that we can start to fundamentally look at it? Because to be honest with you, it's going to affect my business, it's going to affect Charles' business, it's going to affect a lot of businesses downtown when they take that parking away. And I believe, and I went out and measured myself, I believe that there is sufficient ways that we can still introduce some parking while some parking is being taken away. Is there any talks with NCDOT on that before they start to pull our parking in the next year?
So that's a town road, so we don't have to ask the, it's a town.
Okay.
I have said, I don't like this any more than you do. I've got parking.
I
The
know.
design is 100% designed already. The question is, could there be changes to it?
Correct.
Just
Not
money.
without pain, but I will tell you, Kelly is looking at that.
Okay.
But not without pain, and then a lot of approaching our elected officials in engineering, and if there's a safe way to do it. Yes.
But they are looking at that feasibility?
So while that project is under construction, is there actually any construction happening on Main Street between, I say Huntersville, Mount Holly Road and back around to 115 on the north end? If there's not any construction, then they could surely alter it a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there, if it can be designed correctly, there can be alterations.
Yes.
But there's an issue about how might it slow down the project, how much will it cost, what will the benefit be? So there are a tremendous amount of issues, but I would not say nothing can be, would not be
Okay.
correct if we said nothing can't be changed.
Okay.
And these recommendations they're mentioning in 5, they all refer to the 2006 downtown parking study. But they're kind of doing their own too, right? The one that jumped out at me was allow on-street parking to count toward required parking. That seems counter to what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more parking, and now we're going to allow a private commercial interest to say, hey, I don't have to do another one for that 5,000 square feet. There's some out there in the street for me. So why are they going back through these recommendations that are so old?
We already allow on-street parking count for some of your parking, so that was already allowed by our.
Okay, and I think this is before the deck was even built too, so some of these things seem to be counter to
If
what
you
we're-
see the sentence above it, it says it revisit the recommendations.
Yeah, okay. That's definitely one.
So they're definitely re-examining the entire picture of parking for the town.
Yeah, because, I think it's the second one in over there, third one in over there. It's it's the first one. Pretty shocking, the lack of parking we have downtown, especially when it's public parking. So, and it's the fact that it's all in the parking deck and our major attractions in Veterans Park, and you can't get from one to the other safely without.
I will say this about on-street parking too, is multiple benefits. I think when the presentation was made by the Economic Development Consultant, they talked about how much value it brings to the businesses.
Yes.
Right? So that's, the other thing is, I sure feel a lot safer, getting what Charles says, walking down a sidewalk when I've got a stationary vehicle between me and that moving vehicle. So there's that as well. So there are just multiple benefits. And the other thing is, if somebody's in front of you trying to parallel park, you're stopping. And so you're letting them parallel go down Davidson, and that's what you got to do. What is that doing? It's slowing everybody down. When it's not there, that friction's not there, you're just moving. So there's multiple things. So the on-street parking has a tremendous value for us, but Dave said they're revisiting that whole.
Yeah.
Kathy?
I got,
The parking lot that the town created right down from there, between the body shop and the store, it has more spaces in that parking lot than we currently have on the street, right? So it's.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Does it?
Not at all. Forgive me for interrupting you. By leaps and bounds, no ma'am.
It's listed behind you.
How many are?
They took
how
away
many
15
spaces?
north of here that we all forget about in front of Veterans Park.
Oh, well, I'm just talking about right there that affect
They-
businesses because nobody.
They took away all these parking spaces on Main Street, north of Huntersville Concord Road.
Right.
They're taking away all the parking on Main Street that is on the railroad side. And they're taking away all the parallel parking on Main Street to get down to the tattoo shop. That's the last building in what I call the glued six together.
Right.
That's not an engineering term.
And the parking deck doesn't hold that many people?
That,
They're
you
right
talk,
there?
no, you talking about the parking lot. by
The
no
surface,
means.
the
Oh, yeah,
surface
parking
lot.
lot.
No, no.
Is that little lot gonna eventually have access to Main Street, or is it forever gonna be cut off? There is no entry, no driveway access to Main
Oh, it's
Street.
only on Maxwell.
Yeah,
Supposedly, they-
yeah, why is
But it's
that?
a burner.
To keep the, well, there's gonna be on-street parking in that area, so.
But to keep the traffic moving, is that
What,
the
yeah,
reason?
what's happening is the on-street parking is going to occur on the commercial side, not the railroad side, the commercial side, but it's not gonna start where it is today, right at the first
Mhm.
building. It's gonna be down, I don't even know the number, Charles, 6 buildings maybe?
It's the last building. It starts in front of Railroad.
That makes
It's where the empty lots begin, right?
It's right there. at the end.
But you have to go find Maxwell to find the entrance to that lot, was my,
So if they were to create a driveway into, then all of a sudden you're.
Losing a parking spot.
You're
Yeah.
losing multiple parking spots, plus it creates another friction point on Main Street.
but the accesses there are being looked, that we have there, that's where we're looking at putting the Warner Street
Yeah.
thing, so you,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
But that's a combined
I got you.
Right.
street and vehicle.
They just seem to be counter each other.
Nate?
I just want to go back to something Sean said. That Hyperloop thing you were talking about, is that the same, like the Boring Company? Isn't that Elon Musk that's doing the
Yeah, Elon
deal
Musk is doing one
in
of them.
Vegas to
Yep.
the airport?
Yeah, I think they are, that's correct. But they're doing, Elon Musk and Richard Branson both partnered on that deal. So Richard Branson is the brand, which is Virgin. If you look online on their website, you can see the different municipality plans that they already have. One is with Raleigh as well. They're correcting Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, the three of them.
They just laid off half their staff. I think the Hyperloop dream is kind of
But I think,
moving forward.
is the Boring Company the same thing? Is it Hyperloop or is it?
That's different. The Boring Company.
Yes.
I think it's one and the same though, because they're related to one another.
I'd be interested to see what Shook could find out. I mean, if it's Elon
That's
Musk,
where, yeah, I
whoever
mean,
knows.
anything he touches seems to turn to gold, so.
Right. And it sure solves a lot of problems putting it underground, if they can do it efficiently. I mean, redoing that whole rail line is extremely expensive.
Well,
So-
I just think there's just other ways that we can look at transportation right now, instead of just looking at rail,
Cars.
overground, there's multiple ways. I mean, around the world, most of the transportation is underground, so.
We're way
Dave? Oh, excuse me.
So just to clarify in my head, so businesses on Main Street, when this project is done, if I want to go visit the businesses on Main Street, so I have to go either parallel park in front of the new parking lot, or go around into Maxwell and park into Maxwell. Is my thinking right on this?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had it right, because it does make a lot of sense to me in my head right now.
We've said that for 20 years.
It
But
doesn't make any sense.
That needs to change.
Yeah.
That needs to change.
Okay.
While we're thinking out of the box on that, if Shook is going to really think out of the box, I'll go back to one of my favorite subjects, because I get asked this at least 3 times a week. This is two-way pair. It goes north and south out here, and it goes north and south out there. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. If it was 2 one-ways, if this was southbound out here, which would be the natural, because if you come through the circle up here in front of the furniture store, I'm gonna go way back in history. If you stay southbound out here and go northbound over there, then you can have more on-street parking, correct?
Possibly, and Shook Kelly is looking at that. So.
So maybe it's a good thing that we're behind on this project, so there's not as much done as should be done.
It's just paint.
Well, just so, since you opened the Pandora's box.
I didn't start parking discussions,
I'm going to take this opportunity.
and I didn't beg Sean to do it.
I take this opportunity to explain. A lot of cities are doing away with the one-way streets. A lot of them are doing away with, why? Because they move traffic really good, but they're not as good for the businesses. So that's one of the problems. However, having said that, if you're moving traffic really good, but there's no on-street parking for folks, that's the downside of things, is if there's a way to do one-way traffic that has on-street parking and calms the traffic down, that may be better than what's going on now. So that is what's being looked at. But it's not just a simple matter of if we could just go to one-way streets, it will fix everything. Because again, now this is NCDOT's roadway, so half of the equation we're talking about is in control of the state. So these are complicated things, but they're absolutely on the table.
There was nothing in me implying to have one way, and not on-street parking all ways.
No, I think that was your intent of saying that.
That's the only reason I brought it
Yes,
up.
exactly.
Is Shook Kelly looking at Maxwell going, me and you have talked about this before, but Maxwell being a pedestrian only? Because that was something that we had looked at a
That's
couple
in
years
their
ago.
It's in there.
presentation.
It's in there.
Yes.
It's got to be a combination.
Yeah.
Anything else on traffic? Yes.
Jack, when they did the traffic study for the main, did they consider then the one-way, or was that, it was considered?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
so
what
it
you're
looks at
saying.
multiple ways to do it, and it's felt that two-way traffic would be best for the businesses.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
I was just thinking Chip Kelly could draw from that.
And I said, we looked at it multiple occasions when they first started, and then kind of halfway through, and now we're taking another quick look at it. But
Where are we at?
have some on-street parking.
We got a few more minutes.
All right.
I'll just make this other comment regarding the tractor trailers. If we can get some on-street parking, we're gonna slow down the tractor trailers, and they're not gonna wanna come through Huddersville. And that's gonna be safer for pedestrians, because I'm the one that walks people on the sidewalk with my 6-pound dog, and I'm hanging on to her for dear life, for these cars that are right next to me.
We'll just ask if anybody's got any questions.
Downtown would be really uncomfortable for truck drivers. that-
2 and 3, we haven't discussed those topics yet, really. Well, we kind of touched on them.
Well, I know, I mean, we won't hear them crossing Gilead because they're.
So, Lee brought up that we also have the land use in the Shook Kelly and the economic development assessment. Are there any questions on those or comments? I would say, they need to dig into this from all the comments that have been put in and, they all three work hand in hand. I guess somewhere, which one of these areas would have the density? The bad
Land use.
land use.
Listing land use.
I was just saying, if you don't have people here, you don't have businesses. You don't have the need to come here.
Sarah?
In a way, that's what happened that's what happened to the downtown area. The people that lived around here aged out. They started building out at Westminster Park and other places outside of the downtown area. I count the houses that are not here any longer, the people when I was years and years ago, and how maybe 1 or 2 generations lived in the houses. Those are gone. They were not rebuilt as houses. They were in a lot of places torn down. That's what the space between the west end of the town building across the street where Discovery Place is, and all the way down, halfway down the block. Half of that block disappeared because the people aged out. The younger people did not come to live there, and the houses were eventually torn down. Nothing replaced there. That will happen to this area if we don't have some people living here. So I think that we do need to have some of our land used for housing and apartments. When I finished college, when I first started working, I rented a room and food in a boarding house. Then I moved to an apartment in Richmond. Then I moved back home where I came from, and I stayed there. But we need apartments here in the downtown area, in my opinion, in order to bring people here to support the businesses that are here and what others would like to come. Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, Gatewood and I went to Belmont, and we spent several hours there and talked to some of the business owners, and chime in where you really want to. Talked to some of the business owners, the employees, and it was really informative. Belmont has a wonderful little downtown, and we asked them, who are your customers, where do they come from? And what we consistently heard was the bulk of their business occurs on weekends, and it's from people coming in from out of town. They said folks who have layovers at the airport will go there, Asheville, Spartanburg. The thing that really struck me is I knew we were going to go, so I got online and just started to research Belmont. I fell in love with it before we even got there because their online presence is amazing, and they have a downtown Belmont Business Association that is phenomenal. They will help the businesses with social media. All the businesses have a really strong social media presence. So I think that is so critical. I do think we need people downtown, but we have to remember we've got a lot of people coming, apartments that are already approved. But I think times have changed. I don't think it's all about having people right here. So much of it's online, and I would just encourage the business owners now to look at your online presence and see how strong it is. Because I think particularly for younger people, that's where they go first.
One of the things that we talked at length to two business owners, and one of the things we said, who's here during the week? And they said it's the businesses, it's the commercial offices that are downtown.
And the moms.
And the moms. And they're coming for lunch. And while we were having lunch at the deli, some people came in, a mom with a couple of young kids. And I mean, you can see playing at Veterans Park or playing at Holbrook Park and heading to, grab a sandwich and then take it. They do a lot of, there's a wonderful downtown park, and so a lot of people get their food and take it to the downtown park. And so that was one of they get the out-of-towners on the weekend who come because it's a destination now. But then during the week, what sustains them are the people who are working there in town. The other thing, Nate, I was going to ask, tell me how many rooftops are coming over here, because we're talking about needing housing, and it's coming. North State is how many, and Nate has how many?
Oh, gosh, it's so stuck in the mud because it's Charlotte water. I think it's around 300 apartments, and then there's 46 townhomes.
And 109 for me in front of Hill Street.
Right, oh, yeah, okay.
138 in North State.
Those are
So
townhomes.
we have to consider that those are coming. The rooftops are coming, so now we need to plan for the retail.
There's over 630 because I added them up at one time, so
Okay.
it's 630
Units
for
altogether.
residences, single, whether
Yeah.
it's an apartment or a townhome.
Okay.
630 plus.
But there are a lot of different types of apartments. As I said, if you walk Myers Park, you might think there's no apartments there. I'm not talking about the few high-rises that snuck in. But, you could have an 8-unit building that's very residential looking, and it fits right in with some of the mansions that are there. So it's not the giant complexes per se that you still want to allow possibly in the downtown area. It's the more, scaled down version of apartments that.
Sure, I just don't want to lose sight of that number of 630 as I'm thinking it through. That was what I was trying to.
Yeah, hopefully that works.
Yeah.
But we just need to be able to flush the toilet, and Charlotte Water ran out of sewer. So,
Kathy?
Yeah, speaking of other towns like Belmont, one night last week, one of the news channels did a piece on Albemarle and how Albemarle has come back to life. And basically, it was the millennials that came back to town with all these really cool ideas. And there's nothing in downtown that looks like an apartment. They don't have, it's similar to Mooresville. I mean, you know, your people are there, but they are not in downtown. And people from other places come downtown because, I mean, why do you want to come downtown when there's just apartments to look at? You know, you've got to have the people, but all these other places like Albemarle and Mooresville and Belmont have shown that your people don't have to be right in the middle of downtown. You've got enough, and like Shook Kelly said, we have enough currently, not counting those 630, we have enough currently to support 70,000 square feet of commercial retail right now. So, I mean, when those other ones are built and we get more in, I mean, we're really going to be sitting at a good space, that according to his formula, to be able to support these businesses that we want downtown.
I think that formula was a little skewed, and we have to clarify with Shook Kelly, because I think that was Huntersville wide, not just downtown.
6 mile radius is what it says.
Right, and I really think they need to dig down a little bit with Steve Vermain on the problems we had at Vermain Village, because Steve is so experienced, and of course, they work together at Birkdale Village, that I don't see that market there. When you look over at Rosedale, you know, the ABC store moved. There's 3 stores next to Harris Teeter that are vacant and have been vacant. So I didn't buy the 70,000, and I would hope that they can work a little bit more with some commercial experts locally to see if that's real, because it didn't seem real to me, in downtown.
As a follow-up to that, I think that, I remember when Jack and I were reviewing plans and getting feedback from North State developers, there was a lot of reluctance to put retail on the first floor. And I think that it was the risk and some skepticism on the part of lenders that was contributing to that. But I agree, we do need to dig down and find out what is it that would make lenders more comfortable and I think reduce risk for the developer.
I just think a business association, like in the economic presentation that they said, is so critical. And I know for Belmont, theirs is primarily a volunteer, but I wonder if the town would look at creating a position, part-time, full-time, just to help with the commercial retail, to get that going.
Well, and I think we need a niche. I've always said it, like, we need a niche. Like, we just don't have it. And the niche that I had come up with, we were looking at doing some development down here, was Old Town Huntersville. You know, we've got some awesome old buildings. If you guys have ever been in my building was built in 1908. It's pretty cool. It's all exposed brick. That whole entire row of buildings is historical. And I think that we could do some type of development to showcase that old town kind of feel, that village feel that everybody, you know, when you think of downtown Huntersville, this is kind of more of a village. This isn't a city. Mm-hmm. So how do we accentuate that? How do we make people want to like feel, you know, good about where they're at in terms of this is somewhere unique, where it has character and it's not just a strip mall? Because let me tell you, there's tons of strip malls around here. They all go and lose character after 10 years. Even that's why Birkdale is doing this huge project right now. They're revamping because it'll start to lose its character. So how do we build that in? One thing I emailed everybody, like the water tower. Nate, do you own the water tower?
Yes.
I mean, I would love to be able to figure out how to get a grant to paint the water tower and give it some color and bring people.
We have pricing on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's 5 years old now, but
Might be a little different now.
Right, but no, it's not going to be stripped. It's lead-based paint on it.
Yeah.
And they just paint over it, and you logo it.
Yeah.
And of course, Dan Boone wants you to put kind of Huntersville. So I think it's more you know.
Yeah.
You want to paint it and you want your logo on it, then.
I just think having even Huntersville's logo on it, you know, as a whole, as an icon, something.
Sean, that's the thing we saw at Belmont, even the
Yeah.
trash cans.
Exactly.
I mean, every single thing, the banners, the trash cans, the the signage in the storefront.
Yeah, everything.
It was so consistent, and there wasn't one single empty retail space.
Right.
And there was, a lot of the spaces upstairs were residential.
But Sean, if you want to come by the office, we have Land Design, did a complete plan for the park
Okay.
underneath the tower.
Yeah.
And includes the beer garden, which we hope to get a brewery of some type there.
Yeah.
And it has a little amphitheater, as we have it, if you want to come by, and
Yeah.
I'll share it with, I don't know if I'd let Jack see it, but it has a
Yeah.
complete design as a park.
I just think that's gonna add so much that people wanna come down to, because it's iconic, and, you know,
Right.
that'll be awesome.
One of the things that we loved in Belmont was they had old photographs from the town, and they have a historical, some place, I think, near downtown, they had these photographs on the side of their old brick buildings, like your building. Just really big, huge, and a historical building. It was really cool.
One of the things that I'm thinking about, like, you talk about a niche, what has in my mind changed my view of downtown has been the accessibility through the Greenway. Because I know, I live in Cedarfield, I am going to, in a relatively short amount of time, be able to ride my bike from my house to downtown, which is so novel to me. And the thing about it is, we will do that on a regular basis. We already do it with Publix. We ride our bike to Publix all the time because we can't. Music and arts because we can't. I get my blood work at the hospital, ride my bike because I can't. We came here from Greenville, South Carolina, where you have the Swamp Rabbit Trail, which revolutionized, first of all, the downtown was a dump when I was there originally, but they really did a lot of planning there. But then the Swamp Rabbit Trail enabled businesses to pop up along the way and serve the needs of the runners and the bikers and the recreation. And gardens sprung up and parks, and that to me is kind of, I see that almost like the linchpin. It's gonna be, when that's open, the novelty of being able to go and not have to worry about your kids on a street, and you can just bike and have fun. It's gonna be huge. That'd be awesome.
I want to comment on something, because I think you brought up a really great point about just the history of Huntersville, and it's reminded me of a conversations I heard last night in Pottstown by some of the residents, just talking about just some beautiful history that's actually in Pottstown, and then hearing Diane talk about the Greenway and how, like, it could be a trail that people who are visiting Huntersville can visit the historic area, like, put some money in Pottstown. You know, they need they need their streets paved, they need sidewalks, maybe we point out the old school. Like, it could be points on the path to lead people through downtown to these great, beer gardens and the different businesses that are in the area, but to honor the history as well as the future of what downtown is and capturing that village, I think could be really fantastic for local residents and people coming to visit us, from out of town.
Telling a story in marketing is the biggest thing, right?
Exactly.
We want to tell a story, and that story is going to get people to connect with Huntersville.
Exactly.
And I think that's what we kind of need to do. Kathy over here knows a lot of stories. she's the head of the Historic Society.
That'll be cool, because we're just going to accept the revisions in schedule. We're working with a company to produce an app for walking and driving
Town
trails.
hall's going to take
And
minutes,
we
maybe.
were going to start out with, just putting points of interest or homes, notable homes, places, things, and, but that could be something that could be expanded to include, especially on the drive-in tour. So, I mean, a lot of that's, the town could do that, we wouldn't have to pay for it. But yeah, that's one thing that we thought about as far as trying to promote the historical side of Huntersville, was to do the walking and driving tour.
We did that with, we used Traipse, it's an app, and Stanton, Virginia, did that. We were coming back from something, and we were stopped in a small town, and it like popped up on my phone. So we walked this tour. It was great. I mean, it was really fun. We spent a day there. It was fun.
I will just mention also that the town, when they built that portion of Greenway from the trailhead to the Huntersville Elementary, they put in electricity along there. So we do have plans to light that up, for the holidays or do certain events. and
We
things
have
like that.
plans hopefully for some art pieces.
Yeah, right.
Like a sculptor.
So there is
all
some
over the
stuff
place, so,
kind of in
yeah.
motion
Yeah,
there as
really.
well, so that'll be pretty cool for the downtown.
Okay, so this is all good. We need to move to our next item. Dave?
Yes, ma'am. This is great discussion, and quite honestly, if you have, this is how the committee can just keep, you know, giving us comments. We'll make sure Shook Kelly gets them. You can send them straight to Shook Kelly, I don't care. But this is the kind of stuff that will help them round out all of the kind of information that they're sifting through. So, good to listen to. The next item, and this has taken a little bit of time to kind of figure out. I mean, it really seemed like there were a lot of concerns from the committee in terms of how the process was unfolding. And we really took it to heart. And so you received recently a revised schedule that is in draft form. And hopefully you took a look at the rationale behind it in terms of the first page. But when we heard that there were committee concerns that you wanted information in advance, it really changes the nature of the beast in terms of the project. And the analogy I would give is when we did the 2040 plan, there was a lot of just plain old raw data. It was like unemployment, demographics, land use categories, vacant versus built. I mean, it was very, very black and white kind of stuff. And it's okay during discovery to start to put out these maps, because this is pretty much raw data, existing studies that have already been done, et cetera. When you start getting into converting that, as Terry was talking about, kind of focusing, you know, like you're at the optometrist, it starts to turn the data from just statistical manipulation into an art. And that's where the tough part comes in terms of, I think Shook Kelly feels very restrained by giving you information without being able to give an explanation behind it. So you just have to kind of bear with this process a little bit, but we are trying to fulfill what we think was the intent of the committee when concerns were being voiced. The good news is that I think that Shook Kelly was gracious enough to flex with us without saying that it would change the project budget. However, in order to try to meet these demands, it did back up the schedule for the project by approximately 3 months. So I can go through this. I think the important things to notice is that we go from a total of about 8 committee meetings to 13. So that's an imposition on you all. The only meeting that Shook Kelly cannot attend is tonight's meeting. The rest, they say that they will be there. So I think you'll have the benefit of, and this was very, very purposeful, the benefit of having some information in advance, but also having Shook Kelly here to answer your questions and have dialogue with you. So we don't want you to just feel like you're always going to have a discussion by yourself and Shook Kelly's never going to be here. We also, originally, the second public forum was scheduled for March 24th. And now we're pushing it back to May 12th to give you an idea of, another, I think, thing that we heard was before we go out to the public forum and release any kind of a public survey, we are going to run it through the committee first before we unveil, before we have the public forum and before we release any kind of survey. The other thing I want to note is I'd like you to consider the term public survey as being a generic term. We don't know exactly what kind of input device we might want. So to say it's actually going to be a formal survey, I think is not right. We haven't come to that conclusion yet. And we also want to make sure the committee has input into that. So public forum number 2 would be May 12th, as I said. You can see there are additional meetings kind of on either side. We did split out the organizing principles from the alternative futures so that they can be discussed separately. And you get to the public forum number 3 on August 4th. Now, I have not gone so far as to check whether the church is available for these public forums, because I didn't want to get the cart ahead of the horse. didn't want to go any further unless the committee were to say that you are okay with this. But going back to August 4th, again, we were planning to be done by June, end of June, early July. So this, again, backs us up a little bit. And you finally get to the point of, well, before I do that, you really get to the point where September 22nd would be really your final committee meeting by itself to discuss the final plan before you start having a joint meeting with planning board and the town board. So the last one gives you a still version of the schedule. We're just looking for comments and seeing, the one thing we do need to do, and I think we heard this very, very early on, is please settle on some dates and give us as much advance notice so we can put it on our schedule. So the sooner we can confirm what we want to do, I think the better off we'll be. But if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer.
I appreciate the work that you've done revising the schedule, and I would ask the committee if they can approve this.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
first? The extension that the town commissioners voted on in regards to town hall, that was a 6-month extension from December? So the town hall decision will be made before June or July?
It'll be up for a possible decision, that's correct. There's no guarantee it will be a decision then, and it's possible it could happen even sooner.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, but it was just in
Are we
regards to
gonna
the
have a
schedule.
call-in? I'm just not gonna be here for one of the meetings. Are we gonna have a call-in?
As long, I think the technology is working pretty well for us now. It took us a little bit to figure it out. But I think that anybody, as long as the committee, as a body, accepts people who can participate remotely, then staff will do everything we can to get it set up.
Yeah, yes, motion.
I make a motion that we accept the schedule as revised.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next item,
Public
townhome site. Are we going to talk about that?
Public engagement, right?
Yeah,
Public, oh, okay, public engagement.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Usually, staff meets with the chair and vice chair to put the agenda together. We do not send an agenda out without them saying grace over it. When we put in discussion topics, we thought that public engagement might be part of that, and we don't have anything specifically prepared for that, other than to make sure that if you wanted to discuss it, it was brought up.
Okay. I got a question. So all the charts, all these nice charts and everything that Shook Kelly made up for us, and some of them were sourced, I think, from some of our data on the website. Can we use those to try to engage the public on websites or on the internet or whatever? Can we put those out there? Is that okay? I know they've got some copyright stuff on the bottom of it, but.
They're already out there.
Yeah, but can we take them and put them in other places like Facebook groups and things like that to try to.
They belong to the town.
And the answer is?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
You know.
You can't change them though.
No?
No.
I was gonna draw a little town hall.
Yeah, yeah.
As long as it's little.
Yeah.
Okay.
One building, one lot, right?
Anything else? Any other comments or questions on that? Public, new town hall then? Town hall site?
Bobby Williams is going to give you that update.
Thank you, everybody. Allergy season's starting to hit me, so bear with me. Dave asked us to do kind of a quick update on the town hall, and Stephen, I guess, stole some of our thunder. It's not a lot of thunder, it's on pause. Earlier this year, or late last year, the board said, let's take a 6-month pause, and so basically, we got through schematic design, and we got through advanced planning. And that was determining the size the building needs to be, what's gonna serve our 30-year need. So a lot of that work, whether we go in the current site, whether we go in another site, a lot of that work has been done so we can hit the ground running. Forgive me for my voice. So 6-month pause. Certainly, things could happen sooner, talks could resume, but we really don't expect anything beyond discussion before June of this year. And I note at the bottom there, that's the earliest that this would be taken back up. The advanced planning schematic design phase was looking at the site there. Proposed a 3 to 4 story building, about 36,000 square feet. There's an estimated 32,000 square feet in the space needs analysis for what the town would need to serve not only future staffing needs, but also space for the community room similar to this. It would be larger to accommodate more people, a larger town boardroom so that we're not spilling out into the halls on really hot agenda nights with public hearings and things. Would house administration, finance, HR, legal, IT, parks and rec, as well as room for future growth. And certainly we looked at opportunities to add additional storage and flex space into those numbers as well, to make sure that the building would last as long as possible. And then the all-in budget for this project was about $14 million. Question?
So, under this plan, would Town Center be completely vacated?
No, Town Center, you would pull some departments out of Town Center, so you'd have room for engineering and planning to spread out. They're already kind of tapping, maxing out what they've got in terms of space. So Park and Rec, IT, those would be the 2 primary departments that would come out, that would free up space on that 3rd floor for town staff. So this was the plan based on the Town Center site. Contract we entered into last year was a design build contract, so we're still technically under contract. We're on pause with the design builder, and that was Edifice and Creech. Creech designed this building way back in the 90s. They designed a lot of town hall and municipal buildings, and then Edifice is a Charlotte area builder that builds all over the place, including a number of buildings in Huntersville, and I think they're even doing the Davidson Town Hall right now in the Kane Center up in Cornelius. So the board was given a couple of different options, and this was the sort of the previous board's selection of, hey, we think that's the one, and then talking with the folks at Edifice and Creech, what we're going through right now is relatively common in the realm of building and looking at a town hall. You may get going, but things change. You may want to look at other sites, and that's where we are right now. Just another example of how that looks. Part of the public input that we heard through the process was, hey, why can't you just expand from the current site? That was something the town looked at once before, and I believe something I heard interest in last time at this steering committee meeting. And so this is sort of a vision, again, going to what we've already done with the advanced planning and the schematic design, is we kind of know what we need size-wise. And so that information, kind of rough and dirty, we're able to put into just a test fit of the site behind us, going backwards, looking at expanding parking. There might be some additional costs going backwards compared to across the street. The advantages of that site across the street were that the town already owned it. They tried to sell it for years, couldn't do it. Stormwater's already there, parking's already there. The site is pad ready. So some of those savings were built into that site, which made it somewhat attractive at the time. But really, we're on pause. The board has kind of thrown some ideas out there as to other potential sites, and some of those may be in the downtown, some of those may be outside the downtown. And certainly for this committee and where you guys are, it's an opportunity, I think, to let the board know, do you think town hall is an important part of the downtown? Do you think it needs to be in the downtown in the future?
Does it cost us anything to pause the contract monthly? No? Okay.
No. And we've spent about a quarter, it was a $960,000 contract for the first phase, and we put a few things figured in that with the way commodities are, so we could kind of hit the ground running and get the ball rolling on acquisition of materials.
If you went back to the slide before, and the cost of that is more than the other cost.
And that's just kind of, that was rough and back of the napkin, but It was guesstimated to be more just because you don't have a flat pad-ready site.
And what would that give, I can't see, is there square footage?
It would be 10,000 square feet per floor, so 30,000.
So less.
Well, you've got 8,000 here,
Gotcha.
and this would become more your community room space, is sort of what we've envisioned. And another question was, why can't you just go up on this building? This building was built in 1996 for about $1 million. It was not built such that it could go vertical. I think they would tell us it would be cheaper just to tear it down and build up than to expand here. And I don't know that that's necessarily what we want to do to this building, but.
Bobby, the other design was 14 million to moving it. Does that factor in sale of this at all, or is that just straight up?
I guess that's 14 million either way, if we move across the street.
Right,
But we could offset that by selling this
So
property.
that doesn't include offsetting those, that's just.
Right.
So basically it's
Straight
apples
cost.
to apples, you just.
Yeah, we envisioned selling this off, and the town had previously sold some other properties that were sort of envisioned as, hey, this is stuff we had, stuff we sold, could go towards the new building at the time.
May I ask a question related to what she's saying? I'm trying to remember what Mr. Roberts was saying. That 14 on the other plan, on the sliver over there, that number seemed to continue to rise the more he talked. Does anybody remember that conversation?
It's unfinished floors, there's unfinished space in there.
Okay, so that.
And you likely would have that here too. And the board told us 14 million all in, and that's absolutely what we were locked into. And the plan was to get at least the 2 floors and potentially as much of the 3rd floor as possible. And if, the pandemic hadn't hit, costs hadn't escalated, we might have been able to get all 3 floors. But as we were looking, and certainly some of the other facilities we looked at in the area, Concord, Kannapolis, they have portions of their building that are shell as well. So they've got room to grow in the future. And certainly as needs arise, you could program and build in more space.
So, one follow-up and then Sean. So the current space that the town is using in town center, if they move everything back across the street here or somewhere else, other than what I'm looking at right there, then the town can rent out that office space, right?
If we had space to put them in. So if we have either this one or this one, and we program the whole thing with all of our staff, but as of right now, that's not the plan. The plan would still be to leave engineering and planning in that building across the street.
The only plans being considered would be to leave some of the offices over there, is that what you're saying?
I don't know that's based on these plans.
Okay.
And when you say only plans being considered, I think when we put things on hold, I think we're considering everything.
Right, okay.
Whether it's an existing building, new construction, whether it's downtown, whether it's outside of downtown, I think all options are on the table right now. Oh, Jackie, you were going to jump in.
The only thing is, when we contemplated what we would leave on the current 3rd floor of town center, we leave the public works administrative folks, land development folks over there as well. But the administrative parks and recreation folks that are there would come out to leave expansion space as those existing departments grew bigger, and the IT staff that are over there now would come out to leave expansion space for the remaining folks.
Okay.
And some of that was compatibility of function with Park and Rec. They're going to control the community space. Having them in the new building connected to all of the activity that we hope that community space would generate, and then planning, land development, engineering, and public works all kind of go hand in hand with development review and things like that.
Bobby, how many people are in these 2 buildings? Employees? Staff?
It's a good question. We're about 20 here in this building, and then depends on the day over across the street.
I would have said 15 here currently, and 33.
You're there all the time.
Currently over there.
I have a couple questions.
Kind of revolving door.
So if, say you were to expand here instead, what happens to that sliver of land over there? What would be developed there, or what will happen to that space? Or if you move everything there, can the town maintain control of this and be intentional to make sure that businesses or whatever happens here happens according to what this committee says town, or what residents say the town should look like,
versus giving it to a developer who knows what with it.
Absolutely, and I think that speaks to a lot of, what we're looking for from this committee is what do you want to see if this is not the town hall? If it moves across the street or if it expands here. In the 2006 downtown master plan, it was where it was first forecast that this might expand backwards or expand over towards Maxwell. And so some of the rationale or the idea of building it across the street was the Children's Museum, that activity, put the new town hall with that, sort of completes the vision of the downtown master plan from 2006. If nothing happens there, if no building from the town side, certainly that could be a parcel that this committee says, hey, Shook Kelly, town, we want to see something happen there, tell us what you want to see. And if this committee says, no, town hall needs to be here, that makes sense. We certainly have heard that from a number of people in this room. Otherwise, so I don't know, Jack, do you have a strong feeling either way? What's going to happen? I think, the town's tried to sell it in the past and has had some challenges, so.
That parcel over there, town hall became over here back behind, and that could obviously be the private sector. The question, as I heard it, was, well, could we make sure that if you sell it to the private sector, can you make sure what we get is what we want? And the answer to that is, yes, you could. As a matter of fact, you'd be crazy not to. Okay. Could the town sell that for an apartment building? Sure. Is that what this committee would want and the community would want? Maybe not. A mixed-use building? Maybe, right? So something that activates the street front is what's highly desirable. And activating the street front means there's stores and there's shops and there's restaurants and there's glass and it's comfortable, it's a nice wide sidewalk, the seats are spilling out, and all those things. So that would be, the town, when you control the land, you have control of the destiny. So it's not just the zoning that you have, but when you control the land, you can determine who you sell it to and what they put there. So
and the scenario.
Absolutely do that, and as Bobby said, as things come out of this committee and we set the vision, that helps to establish what the kind of ground rules will be.
And that scenario that you mentioned kind of is what played out with the former Blythe building, the former police station. It was put up for sale. The folks that wanted to put the brewery in were the bidder, and then we had upset bid process, and one of the upset bidders wanted to put in a medical office, which wouldn't necessarily have generated the type of commercial activity that we were hoping for, and ultimately, economic development statutes, site control allow you to make sure you're getting the types of things you want to see.
I think it's really important to not minimize the cost of the stormwater on every site and to really get that estimated, because, we're having to go underground at Vermillion Village rather than putting ponds in, because that kills, your use of the property. It's extremely expensive. The fact that the original site does have that all in place, you're going to have to weigh that cost on every other site very heavily.
And Sean, you mentioned the infrastructure plan. In some cases, we're still waiting to see what the notices of funding opportunities are going to be and some of those strings that are coming with those opportunities. But with the American Rescue Plan money, we are looking at doing some stormwater investments. Also looking at doing a downtown stormwater master plan, because we know this is the oldest infrastructure in town. We know we got ditches failing in various parts of the downtown. The challenges Nate mentioned, Jack mentioned, looking at regional stormwater solutions. That is one element we're looking at to try to just get a handle on not only the stormwater for our residents, but if we get additional residents, additional activity, what does that do to the stormwater situation here as well?
Right. What about doing a mixed-use town hall facility? I mean, one thing, if you go back to the original, where the grassy knoll is, I call it. So, the grassy knoll, and if you go to where the building sketches are, next one, please. So if you look at that bottom level could all be retail, right? We could go 4 levels or we could go 6 if they passed an ordinance and raise the ceiling. We could put retail on the bottom, and you could have a grand staircase up to the 2nd floor for your town hall. I think what people want to see on the ground level if they're walking around is they want to have retail or experiential interaction. You know, if that's right in the middle of it, and on-street parking. And, you know, if we have that ability to make a mixed-use building, that gives the town income and generates, you know, some type of balance to pay for your $14 million project, which would probably be 16 or 18 by the time you put in those retail shelves on the bottom. But is that a possibility? Can we work a public-private kind of deal like that?
I know that was looked at one point in time with regard to the town hall. I don't know how far we went with that.
Right.
I've seen in other parts of the country, you know, fire stations sharing buildings with other entities, and I mean, it's certainly, again, you know, this committee, if that's something this committee feels really strongly about, all options with town hall are on the table.
Well, there was talk last time about a library. I mean, like,
Yeah.
a library could be on the base floor that's still community oriented, you know.
Yeah, and it's right next to
Cafe,
Discovery.
library,
Yeah, it works with the kids.
Yeah.
But what's making this such a difficult, like, is it just the technicalities of everything? Or, because it feels like, you know, you've got sort of numbers and number of people and dollars, so why is this so, what is the controversy, or why are there so strong opinions about it?
It was election year.
that-
No, I'm
is
dead
that-
serious. It
but
was
I mean-
election year, that was it. No, it was a, they
That ain't all it is.
But is that really, there's not like any, is there something that makes it like this is really difficult, or it's just not
All right,
really?
are there questions about the town hall?
Yeah, I got one. There's another one in the mix, I guess, that is the property out back here, right? That that lot that we're looking at,
We
so.
did, the board did authorize the manager to make an offer for the piece of land behind the former CarQuest Foster Frame building.
Right, so that's something that, it could be a giant civic space. It could have auditorium interactive kind of thing, and it could be double as a town hall. It could be the farmer's market on that end with some parking, and you could really build a nice civic structure out back and around the corner to connect Veterans Park and do a lot of things with it. You know, I know it's pie in the sky, and it's probably going to be more than $14 million, but, you know, if that goes through, we'll have a lot more space to work on civic or whatever.
Is these estimates on cost with building materials as they are right now?
This was,
Nate knows what I'm talking about, exactly.
The 14
These are last
million-
week's.
The 14 million was our all-in, so it was about 13 million on the building. We were gonna get
Right.
probably those 2 floors. Certainly, some value engineering would go on. 3rd floor would definitely, at this point, be vacant. And then we'd have about $1 million to upfit it. So, you know, we were squeezing, especially with option C, which was the previous board's preference. You know, we were squeezing, but we were still within the range to get in there $14 million. Jackie's the numbers gal.
Yes, there was talk of value engineering. There was acknowledgement that construction prices were moving while we were talking, and there would be a need for value engineering, and that was part of the reason for the shell unfinished space. I'm getting a text from the manager that's watching. The direct answer to your question, could there be a public-private partnership? His answer to that's yes. I want to, I've been sitting here kind of quiet. To me, your question earlier about what might happen with the grassy knoll, if town hall goes someplace else, I would say all options are on the table. I'm not sure a decision's been made about what might happen with that lot. I was here when we offered it for sale fall of 2017, and were no takers, so I'm a little jaded from that, but if I had no takers then, would I have takers later? Maybe. Should it remain open space, or should there be additional park amenities there? My personal opinion, I trip over my own feet all the time. That's not a flat lot. There's a little bit of a dip in it. If it's to remain a grass lot, help the trippers to not fall in a hole over there. So it's probably going to need a little bit of fill in, but thank you.
Okay,
Are you at liberty to discuss what the other potential sites are? Because so far, all I've heard are across the street and here plus some.
I don't have all of those sites. I know we had some commissioners submit some. And I think the list went to Jackie, so I'm looking at her.
And so this is how I'd respond. So I interpret the board said, take a pause. And as a staff person, okay, pause. What should I be doing during that pause? Are there sites I should be looking at? And so we've asked the board, are there sites I should be looking at? And there is a list of some. This is what I would say to you. Some of those are in downtown and some are not. And so I would encourage you, if you feel strongly that you think town hall should be in downtown, I think now is a smart time for you to speak up and express that as a committee. I'll bet I'm one of the least traveled persons in the room. I don't travel a ton, but I have some. I think about the places that I have been, and is the municipal civic building, the town hall, the city hall in downtown, or is it a little bit further out? Jack, help me out here. I struggle for thinking of places where town hall is not in downtown. And I don't mean to make that give you a specific mindset, oh my gosh, it has to be downtown. But I am saying, if you feel that way, now is your opportunity as a committee to speak up and say, we really believe this municipal space should be in downtown.
So, anything else on that?
I think there's been some discussion by the committee in terms of wanting more direction from the board, even to the extent of wanting to pause the plan if we don't get it. Firstly, I think what I'm hoping you're hearing is you need to decide if you want to take the issue up, and if you do, you should feel free to debate it and talk about how far you go. Is it just on siting? Do you want to talk about what happens to in front of town center if that's not built? I mean, there are a lot of things this committee can opine on, and I think you need to grasp the whole battle, quite frankly.
I'll buy it.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
To that point, I'm not a voting member, and I know there's split votes on whether across the street or here, but maybe we approach it first. Do we all agree that it should stay up in downtown or not, yes or no? And then if there's
It should be downtown.
I would suspect it would be a unanimous vote.
many guys.
At least then we have something to tell the board.
Yeah.
Well,
Gotta start.
we're split 50-50 on where it is, but we still want it downtown. At least we're sending some kind of message.
Yeah.
So that's a thought.
Good point.
It's a good point.
Okay.
Narrow down the options.
I have a question. So if we're looking at options and looking at the option of expanding here, it looked like that was a 3-story building behind, have we gotten a pretty firm cost estimate?
We have not. That was a kind of an exercise that they did, just looking at, we approximately know the shape and size of the lot.
Right.
We know the shape and size the box needs to be. And whether it's configured there in a rectangle or configured there in a square, it's still kind of configured the same way. So that really doesn't have, these numbers, we could get close to 14 and get 14 with value engineering. This number, they'd have to do a little more work on it, take a little more evaluation. But that's part of the reason we went with the design build, because we knew there'd be some trade-offs and adjustments as we go. And it's a living process, not just getting a plan that you either move forward or don't move forward with and hope that the architect and the builder get along in the end of the day.
I mean, I do want to say something about what we're looking at here. Now, I don't know what these numbers are, but I'm looking at a 3-story, 30,000 square foot building with basically the same parking lot we have out here for a 1-story building. And I'm saying this doesn't pan out. And that's probably why we're looking at other land. So I'm just issuing caution. Because my introduction to Huntersville was I came to this building, I was in this building, and I had to face Mr. Charles Gignard on Commissioner's Night that filled his spaces up, that hurt his businesses because our parking lot was too small for this building. So I just mention that to say it's not, papered out in a way that you need to do it. And I know that the town is looking at some additional land, and that would make all the difference in the world to make it really work in reality. Stormwater is a huge issue. Parking is a huge issue, and these are the kind of things that the town staff is already working towards.
And depending on where y'all send us, I mean, that 3-story could have a parking deck on the bottom that serves multiple uses. Who knows? It could be a parking deck with a private use as a part of it. Who knows?
Yeah, and the other thing on stormwater, this whole quadrant needs stormwater, right? So even Mamma Mia's over here, one day, we're gonna have to handle that. So that needs to be done with some federal funds and try to do what we can just to fix this whole quadrant, not tax this one issue with the entire stormwater for this area.
Charles?
Madam Chair, if you would allow a motion, I'd like to make a motion that we as a committee tell the elected officials or suggest strongly to the elected officials that the town hall, whether it's here, there, yonder, there, wherever, within 2 blocks of this intersection, that the town hall stays downtown. I make that in the form of a motion.
Somebody want to make a second?
Second.
Third.
Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion carries. Thank you.
So while I'm talking, Madam Chair,
I didn't think you were. Okay, go ahead.
I kept quiet for a little while. I think there's a third option in town hall. And I think it's that there are other people that will sell land, and they're not me, because mine's not over here. There are other people that would consider selling land that adjoins the 1.25 acres, which is a whole lot more land than the grassy knoll. I'm going to show you how out of the box I get. I did buy property downtown 30 years ago and told I was crazy then, so I'm going to be crazy again. If you go to the new 1.25 acres on the other side of what used to be Foster's, and you put a nice town hall there, and you make, some people call it negative space, you've got to have parking, you put a parking deck somewhere along Maxwell there, that helps the downtown businesses, yours and mine. Yes, I'm gonna go way out of the box. If you tore this building down, everybody can inhale and we can breathe again. Then you could somehow get some on-street parking. And then I'll go so far as to say, on the grassy knoll, go back to the DOT and say, we're gonna have on-street parking on 115. And if you took and slid that back, not easily, and put on-street parking there, you slow the traffic down so you can walk these streets. I'm not sure what planners, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure what the designers call it, but this corner then becomes negative space. It becomes a sitting area, it becomes all sorts of, when I had that block drawn 25 years ago, they wanted where Loopy's was and Slice House Pizza is now, and those buildings to become negative space, no buildings. Okay, so it becomes areas to go to. My personal opinion is with what they bought and what they can buy, and they do have the money, Jackie won't tell you that, but I will. There's plenty of money in this town. Used to wasn't be. Then you put the town hall, I don't care if you make it facing Maxwell, I don't care if you make it facing 115. Put the town hall there, make this negative space, and get on-street parking, whether it's on my side or this side, I really don't care. And you back up the grassy knoll, and you get some on-street parking, whether it's on my side again, on the other side, it slows the traffic down, and you've got more parking. Put a parking deck back here somewhere, there's a plan somewhere in this building that shows a parking deck back there about 25 years ago. And build a town hall, whether it's mixed-use town hall, I could care less about that, I didn't say it's not a good idea, but you put a mixed-use or a true town hall back there and make this the focal corner. Cashin's ain't going nowhere, and I'm not about to speak for Bob Cashin. They made too much money on that corner to go anywhere. If you want my buildings, go right ahead, I'll take a check. They tried that, they didn't want to pay me about it. But they bought that land, might as well say it's done. And get way out of the box and bring some on-street parking, slow it down so it's walkable, and then go forward.
So there's been money that's been invested in the design across the street on the grassy knoll. Would anyone's opinion that was against that area or not leaning forward towards that, would that change with Sean's idea to add retail space in the bottom and maybe take the building up a story? Would that change anyone's opinion of that area?
I liked the idea of retail. In fact, when the first discussions were coming around that building, I mentioned to Melinda, who was not mayor at the time, but commissioner, that it would be a shame not to have retail space on the first floor on 115. So I've been thinking that would be a great idea, but then I was told that that was nixed.
Well, Charles might take a check here to do it across the street. I mean, he said it'll take people's money. But
That's why
It's got 2 or 3 zeros in it. I offered to buy the grassy knoll and put retail on the ground floor and put town hall on the second and third floor. It probably got as far as one discussion. That offer was put on the table. To put retail on the ground floor and town hall and meeting spaces on the second and third floors.
I think that's a fantastic idea, because the one that's across the street is already planned to have an unfinished floor. Well, why don't we just finish that floor with retail space? Everybody wins, and you've got this fantastic corridor at 115 with shop fronts facing each other, and we can get the ice cream store to come back. My daughter's been really disappointed ever since they went back to selling only video games.
I'll tell you why the ice cream store is not there. He couldn't get employees because they were paid to stay at home. He could not staff that building. That's the only reason. He was selling ice cream. He couldn't staff it.
That's why I became liking the idea of expanding this, because that was nixed, that idea.
My issue with it over there, I just think proportionally it's too big. It's a small sliver, and the building that we were presented is massive. I think aesthetically, I'm not a designer, but it just did not look right. And I'm not sure retail on the bottom, it'd still be the same size there.
Is there something comparable around here that we could say, if you look at this area like at Cornelius or Davidson, this is the same depth? Because that's the thing too, looking at it, we see a lot of brick, we see a lot of red, we see a lot of the same design because it's made to look like what's existing. But if you think about it, when you're a little person and you're looking, you're walking around, you've got that nice open space at the beginning that you can say, there's a lot, that negative use, whatever it is, the empty space there, that's aesthetically pleasing. And then you're hiding what one may consider an eyesore. The parking deck. So I just see, the only question I would have with that in the retail, is that going to give the capacity for the 30 years that Dave was talking about by not having the 36,000 square feet dedicated to the town? Would that be enough?
Well, the proposal's for 3 stories, most of them. I think
Right.
3 out of 4, so they could just go up a story.
Right, within the budget.
It's very misleading. Discovery Place, we know it is 3 stories, but that's a 4-story building.
It's 52 feet.
Okay, it's 3 stories because Discovery Place got extraordinarily tall ceilings. But that actually is more like a 4-story building. So if you put a 4-story building on this street, it may be a few feet taller, but it's not going to be much taller.
I think what you're seeing here is the intent, and they have a fly-through of this as well, so that was the intent, is to try to visualize what it would look like, and as Charles said, it's where you can kind of see it matches up with the height down.
I would hope that Shook Kelly is listening to this, because all these ideas, they are the design experts. And so I really want them to weigh in on the ideas, or all the ideas are presented. Everybody probably has a favorite. Charles has his. I kind of like this 4-story idea with retail on the first floor. But I really want the experts to weigh in, because that's what we're paying them for.
And honestly, it seems like we should vet out it's been called the annex on that plan, so we could actually have an apples to apples comparison. Because right now, there's this beautiful plan that some people may or may not like, and then there's this, looks like it was sketched on a napkin, and there's plenty. I don't know how, I have a favorite, but I'm biased. I don't think you can weigh those side by side without.
I think there's a reason why most townhomes don't have retail. I'm not sure what it is, but I personally haven't seen a lot of town hall buildings with retail at the bottom, and there's gotta be some.
I've seen one, and
You've seen one?
yeah, it's pretty cool. So what they did is they did a huge staircase up to the second floor in the middle of the building. And then on the bottom floor, they did retail all the way around it. So you have one grand entrance into the town hall, and then you have the retail below it, which is kind of a cool way to do it, because it gives the town hall an entrance. But Shook Kelly, like Nate said, will have the way in on
And
that.
it could be, that's the unique thing that makes Huntersville different.
If you go to Mount Holly, you'll find the old A&E building that I helped them design about 20 years ago when they took a massive old plant, and they've got all sorts of activities, including their police department all in one building, and public space, and retail opportunities facing the new Caramount facility across the street. Now, we don't have an old building that got demolished decades ago, but they're unusual, but I think half the people in this room want something unusual downtown anyway.
Okay, so we were moved from town hall and probably into the open discussion. I have a couple things that I would like to ask for us to think about or get information on as we wrap up. Does anybody else have anything else?
I have one thing, sorry, just want to throw one more thing about town hall in here. The fire department will eventually be moving from downtown, correct?
Well, that was one of the things that I had for us to find out more about.
Okay, thank you, go right ahead.
All right, so I was there, I have 4 things. One is I would like some information on how can we move, what would be the next steps to move forward with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library Association or library to have a satellite library here in the Arts and Science Building, as we call it, the old library. The second thing is the fire department. I understand that they're looking for land to relocate the fire department. So what is the status of the fire department, and is that a reality for it to move out of downtown? And if it is, I believe the town owns that property, not the fire department. So what would we want to do with that? What would happen to that? The third thing is Discovery Place Kids, what is their status with the town on leasing on that for, I think, $1 a year? When is it up? I think it's fairly soon, unless I missed it, and it's been extended. And what's going to happen to it? What are the next steps in Discovery Place Kids staying where it is?
I hope so.
Or is it going to go away? The fourth thing is, let me find it on my script, public-private partnership. I would like some information, thoughts on having a public-private partnership within the downtown area for businesses and owners that want to revitalize their building, refurbish it, reconstruct it to meet the need of a business that will move in there, or construction of new buildings to facilitate services, retail, not living, services, professional, community enhancement services. That's my items. Anybody want to add anything else?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I would want an update from the folks at Blythe and from the town and from the state as to where we are in the schedule for the Main Street project, how far behind we are, and how that's going to fit into what Shook Kelly might find out about changing any of this. I know they're not on schedule because they're still working on utilities. I just want to know, I think this committee needs to be aware of that time schedule, because what goes on with that road affects about everything. It doesn't affect what we do, but affects how we approach it from my perspective.
Anybody else have anything else?
I got one more off of public-private partnerships, and Charles's idea of Mount Holly when they fixed up the mill and the sliver over there. So in the case of fixing up a mill, I don't know if the town still owns it or not, but you got an existing piece of property, and it was far less than buying putting up something shiny and new. If we put retail in the sliver over here, we're gonna have a hard time getting businesses in there at whatever the new square footage is gonna be, $30 a square foot or whatever, because it's gonna be expensive. So in the public-private partnership area, is there something we could do that, I don't want to subsidize a lease or anything like that, but to take some of the cost so we can get somebody like Sam's Soul Food instead of getting a Banana Republic in, that kind of thing? Something to really make it a more mom-and-pop friendly type area that kind of matches what we have already, rather than, getting chains in. So.
Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am. Can that parking deck be added to? Did we engineer that? I know we talked about engineering that. Because when Discovery Place stays, on Saturdays and Sundays on good days, there's not a parking space in that building. So if you put a town hall / retail building on the grassy knoll, there's not parking. You think there's parking, but there's not parking. So I don't know if we can add parking, 2 more levels to that parking deck.
I don't believe there is.
I'm sorry, I can't address that. I can tell you, I have heard that it was built with the suggestion it might eventually be able to be expanded, but I'm.
I know we discussed it. I don't know what the engineers did with the discussions.
Well, the Discovery Place, when kids were not supposed to have the whole building, they're supposed to charge.
I'm not disagreeing with that
Okay.
either. I'm saying that they fill it up when they're busy,
I hear you.
which is a good thing.
I want to answer questions I can, and some of those are complicated and I can't, but because one of them has been addressed before, maybe I can take one off your list. As a CPA, I like looking at people's financial statements. That's my good time. And so we forwarded to the board Monday night the DPK financial statements. On page 21 of their financial statements. Off the top of my head, I can tell you their lease theoretically ends in 2025. I don't know what date in 2025, but that's not that far anyway. There is a line, page 23 of 41 of their financial statements, there is a line that says, the fair value of the commitment is being advertised over the 30-year term of their lease due to the fact that it is probable that it'll be renewed. So in 2015, they will have exercised their 15-year lease, and they had the option to renew 3 more times for 5 years at a time. So that would be a second of that 15 years. So they state in their financial statements that their intent is to stay there for 30 years and at $1 a year plus what they're paying on the parking deck. Why wouldn't they? So as long as they're meeting their commitments.
I think I need to talk to you.
Yeah, why you got that open? What's their revenue?
I think I
What was
need
their
to talk
revenue
to
for a
you.
year?
What's the rental?
No, the revenue.
What revenue? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they have not given us revenue per site, so this is Discovery Place Kids for all of their
Oh,
locations.
for a whole thing, okay, all right. I'm just curious.
That's up, anybody else have anything? No, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, ma'am.
A second? Any discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye, opposed?